the big story that we are tracking today was of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who spent 36 rather excruciating hours in India. It all started with the tongue lashing he got during his pull aside with Prime Minister Modi on the sidelines of G20. Then, to add insult to injury, his plane was grounded because of a technical snag. Original time of departure was 8 p.m. on Sunday. He finally took off at about 1 in the afternoon today. While stranded in Delhi, by the way, Trudeau stayed pretty much holed up in his hotel. Newspapers reported that he didn't have any engagements at the MEA nor at the Canadian High Commission. And while he sat at his hotel, he didn't really have very pleasant things to read, because not just in India, even in Canadian media, Justin Trudeau got quite a bit of backlash. Most of the commentary that he invited was of the cringe variety. From the Toronto Sun, that commented on how the Canadian Prime Minister seemed to have few friends, to others saying that on the issue of shielding Khalistani separatists in his country, Trudeau was given a scolding by the Indian Prime Minister. But despite all of this, what is exceptional and what is unbelievable, that seeming patronage of Khalistani separatists at the hands of the Canadian government still continued. As Mr. Trudeau was sitting in India, a so-called Khalistan referendum was taking place in Surrey, in Canada. Before this, Mr. Trudeau even defended Khalistani activities in his country as freedom of speech. Now, with the experience that he had over the last 48 hours, will we see a slightly more chastened Justin Trudeau? Let's put this across to two voices who are very, very strident and very, very experienced when it comes to dealing with Mr. Trudeau, his friends, and especially the Khalistan question in Canada. Terry Milewski, author of Blood for Blood, 50 Years of the Global Khalistan Project, and Puneet Sahni, expert on the evolution of the Sikh identity. His book is going to be released very soon on that subject. But I want to start with you, Mr. Milewski. When you observed Mr. Trudeau, especially at the G20 Summit, all that happened over here, do you expect at all that there is going to be a slight shift in stance when it comes to the kind of relationship he's had with the separatist element in Canada?
Well, there certainly has to be a shift in stance, doesn't there? I think that this has been quite a blow to the Canadian delegation and the Prime Minister personally, to be spoken to in this way by Prime Minister Modi at a time when he's trying to improve relations. Obviously, there's a serious problem if Prime Minister Modi is driven to the point where he's basically abandoning diplomatic niceties and almost punching Prime Minister Trudeau in the nose with this sort of language, accusing Canada of harboring people who are inciting violence against Indian diplomats, which, by the way, is true. That's a very inconvenient truth for the Prime Minister, is it not? So I think what's going to happen, there has to be a review back in Ottawa when the Prime Minister finally gets back to Ottawa. I think they've got another plane for him. After the last one broke down embarrassingly. And the Canadian side is going to have to look at the question, what are we going to do to address India's concern? So what are we going to do about the fact that Canada is now acquiring the image where anything goes, where Khalistani activists can parade through the streets of Toronto and Vancouver, flourishing posters calling Indian diplomats killers, basically painting targets on their backs, where they can go through the streets of Toronto with on the back of a truck with a life-size illustration, a celebration with life-size figures celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi in 1984, where they can put up posters honoring and glorifying the Air India bomber, no less, Talvinder Parmar, the author of the Kanishka bombing of 1985. This has gone far too far for most Canadians' taste, and the Prime Minister has to do something about it to answer these very legitimate concerns.
The concern in India is, Puneet Sahni, that this is almost turning into a separatist movement within Canada. Is it really that bad, or is it being overhyped? The fact that now gurdwaras are playing host to the so-called referendum, public schools are being used to put up posters which have got images of weapons, of Bhindranwale. How deep-seated is the problem really in Mr. Trudeau's country?
So thank you for inviting me, Padmaja. So, it's a bit tricky. So the thing is, of course, Trudeau is going to end in disgrace, as we saw. His legacy is all tattered. But when he goes, this problem will not end, because this Khalistanis have infiltrated the Canadian democratic institutions and completely undermined them. And this is like a mafia operation. So, when you have a mafia, of course, they have held the population hostage. So nobody dares speak against them. And also, the politicians are afraid of them. So to give you an example, when Mrs. Gandhi's float was taken out, nobody dared condemn it. The one, I think, the member of parliament, her name is Anita Anand, she tried speaking against it, and you have to see the harassment she got. On the other hand, when this low-life Khalistani, thug, he runs a small gurdwara, and, he was killed in all probability by a gangland hit. They got so many MPs to issue statements for, this Khalistani thug. And, this is how it runs. They have it's kind of like a Muslim brotherhood that they have entered. And I give you an example, Padmaja. So we know, of course, I'm no supporter of Operation, Blue Star. It was a blunt, carried very, consequences. So KPS Brar wrote a book, Blue Star, the True Story. So what the Khalistanis are doing, I am holding it. They are saying we are publishing a Punjabi version, right? And it is all lies in his name, in the name of KPS Brar. And they are saying, what I did was very bad. They were very great. We lost it. And how many people, Indian Army officers were killed? Indian Army soldiers were killed? 15,000. So the thing is, they lie shamelessly. They have no conscience. And this is the contempt they have for average Khalistani as well. This is their brain, that we will tell them any lies and, they would believe it. But these are just a criminal mafia has infiltrated the Canadian institutions. And to get them out would be very, very hard. So even I don't know the next prime minister, I don't know what he would be able to do. But Canada is going to be an antagonistic country and going down the drain itself for, I think, the coming years.
So clearly the Canadians are not in favor of this, just given the kind of coverage he has got, people saying that he has very few friends. Even in India during G20, I think the messaging was very, very clear. There has to be some huge importance and political compulsions which make Trudeau pass off these frankly seditionist protests as free speech. What are his compulsions, Puneet Sahani?
So, ma'am, there are two things. So, they are terrorized the system. Now, I don't think, it's the, the lunatics running it. They also, you have to understand the woke virus. When they do something wrong, it's like communism. And the results are disastrous. They don't think, okay, we did something wrong and we should self-reflect. They think we have not done it enough. And we should actually do more of socialism or, more of this woke mindset. Then maybe we'll get the success. And he has basically destroyed the Canadian society by, doing this. And, to give you a point that how Sikhs are opposed to it, it's the same Gurdwara where this referendum was happening just yesterday. I tell you, 25 years back, a long time back, they created such a nuisance there that, the Canadian armed police had to come with sniffer dogs and helicopter and also. And then and it was all for the control of the Gurdwara. They are violent elements. At that time, the Supreme Court got involved. What the hell is happening? And they were like, we are going to monitor the election. And when the Supreme Court of British Columbia monitored that election of that Guru Nanak Sikh temple, would you believe 40,000 people came out to vote in a small country like Canada 25 years ago? You cannot get this many people even today in Delhi to vote for a Gurdwara election. And what was the result of it? First to last, Khalistanis lost the election. And among the top losers was this father of Harjeet Sajjan that, again, Justin Trudeau foisted on, patriotic Sikhs, this thug Khalistanis. So they have no support. But what can you do when they go after your daughters or they go after your children? And, I don't want to make a spectacle of, I have to also suffer a little bit. But these people, I have always been making the case, and we don't have time here, but these are as nasty, as violent as jihadis and way more vile. So what do you do with these people if the state is compromised and doesn't have the will or the clarity to crack on it? Of course, everybody goes silent.
There were two countries to whom we posed the same question. There was Mr. Trudeau and there was Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak said unequivocally, we condemn this, we are going to act on this. What was the reason that despite the kind of language that India used, Not only did he try to hide behind free speech, but on the very day that he was sitting in Delhi, we had a referendum being carried out in Surrey.
Well, the referendum doesn't breach Canadian law. The referendum is people getting together to vote on an issue that they chose to vote on. And it's very hard to see how Canadians could make that illegal. I know that it's illegal in India. We have a different legal system, and it's perfectly legal to go through the streets shouting Khalistan Zindabad. It's perfectly legal to say, let's vote on whether we think that Khalistan should be a free and independent Sikh nation. But the problem is, what about when they do cross the line into the open incitement of terrorism and violence, when they paint targets on the backs of Indian diplomats, as they certainly did with these killer posters most recently in the wake of the assassination, the gangland killing of Mr. Najjar in Surrey, British Columbia? What about that? What about the incitement to violence against Indian diplomats and the celebration of terrorism represented by the tableau of Indira Gandhi's assassination, paraded through the streets of Brampton, Ontario, which is kind of Canada's little Punjab, if you will. The failure of Canada to deal with those provocations is the issue. Remember that Rishi Sunak is a hero in India now because of what he said, that there's no place for extremism in Britain. Well, there is actually, but they draw the line very clearly, and if you cross it, you are dealt with. That's the difference. There are certainly extremists operating in Britain, but at least rhetorically, the Prime Minister of Britain has stepped up and says, we agree with you about where the line should not be crossed. And the Canadian Prime Minister so far has not done that. They don't get it. The present government of Canada has still not shown that it gets what the problem is. That the people that they rely upon to vote Liberal at federal elections, they're going too far, and they have to be stopped.
All of this happening in front of our eyes, whether it be domestically or globally at a platform like the G20, the message is unequivocal, the results are in front of your eyes. What does it take for a government to simply see the writing on the wall? Let's hope better sense prevails sooner rather than later. Thank you very much, as always, Terry Miliuski and Puneet Sahni, for joining us with your wisdom.